We've got some developing news this afternoon. A train carrying at least one car's worth of hazardous materials has derailed outside of Detroit, Michigan, according to Fox News. Police have closed the area surrounding the accident pending an investigation. Now, this comes just after a Houston area train incident killed a driver and derailed over 20 cars over the weekend. And yes, the cargo on the train included hazardous materials, prompting Union Pacific to monitor air quality at the site of the crash, according to the Splendora Police Department.
These high-profile derailments come, of course, just weeks after a chemical incident along the rail lines in East Palestine, Ohio, made national headlines. Residents there voiced concerns about lasting health effects during a town hall last night. Local journalist Jordan Miller attended and told News Nation what he saw. Let's watch.
This was supposed to be an open town hall meeting at first, and then they decided, you know what, we're not going to do that. We're going to make it where people walk in and they will just walk up to booths and ask people their questions. And that made people even more irritated. And in that video that you just saw with the mayor, he got really loud in the gym along with another resident and said, this isn't what you guys showed up for. You guys showed up for answers, and we're going to give you the answers that you need. And he looked at everyone, he yelled, we're going to have everyone go up in the stands and they can ask questions. We just hope everyone stays civil. If it doesn't, then we're going to have to end it. But Mayor Trent Conaway was very passionate yesterday, and he was annoyed that Norfolk Southern, they're the ones who moved it from a town hall originally and to this open forum with the booths set up that they walk around, and then Norfolk Southern never even showed up. If you want to talk about angry residents, that peed them off a little bit more.
Jordan, there's so much with that, because you're right. It went from town hall to open house, where they were going to hand out pamphlets as if that was supposed to answer questions. And then we see the mayor upset because I'm sure he too is feeling the pressure from his neighbors. He knows everybody in town. He's part of that community himself. Well, my question to you is, do you think that the residents of East Palestine feel any better after last night's town hall, now that they see that the mayor is also irritated by everything that's happening?
Not at all. Not at all. I spoke with one woman after the town hall concluded, and she said, I'm a mother of 5. I have 5 boys, and I still don't know if I can give them a bath. I wanted answers. I came in here with a lot of questions, and I left with a lot of those questions unanswered. People are still very upset in East Palestine, and they want answers. And what they were most furious about is Norfolk Southern. The people at the head of the train derailment, they weren't there, and they quoted, because they feared for their safety.
As if the people living there dealing with possibly contaminated water aren't fearing for theirs. Jordan, I have to ask you, though, are people more frustrated with the federal government, or are they more frustrated, in your opinion, with Norfolk Southern?
That is a great question. If you were to walk up to someone right now in East Palestine and ask them, I think that they would say Norfolk Southern. They want answers from Norfolk Southern. We just found out yesterday that there was a woman who lives fairly close to the railroad tracks who said that Norfolk Southern deemed her house toxic and unsafe for her to return. And that was news to everyone, including the mayor and the fire chief of East Palestine. But people were calling out the White House. They were wondering, where is Pete Buttigieg in this whole thing? They want answers, and they feel as though the White House is kind of turning a blind eye to everything that's happening in East Palestine.
Yeah, there's plenty of blame to go around. I don't think there's a wrong person of those two, the government and Norfolk Southern, to point your finger at. There's a lot of responsibility across the board for reasons that we've talked about. I mean, really, it is this. The word fascism is thrown around a lot, but the union between the corporations and the government, which is the definition that we really should all be going by, is really all on display here, where you have technology that was invented through the ingenuity and labor of American workers, and that was routinely ignored. At one point, we had the journalist from The Lever on yesterday. She talked about how at one point Norfolk Southern was the one advocating and bragging about having the new braking technology. But the second it became the case that they were going to have to use it across the rail industry, rail lobbyists started saying, no, we don't want to have to actually implement this like $500 million brake system, and they lobbied hard against it. And they didn't have to implement it. That was decades ago, and we have seen incidents after incident after incident of derailment. These things get swept under the rug. Nobody has to be liable. We talked yesterday a little bit about what happened with the last big train crash like this with the same chemicals in New Jersey. The rail company, I think it was Conrail in that case, paid out $500 to $1,000 to people in this low-income community and cross their fingers and hope and pray that there's not going to be long-term health effects of the spill going on down the line. But the people in East Palestine seem to be aware that that's not good enough, and they're waiting for anyone to take responsibility.
Is this year having more train crashes than are normal? Certainly, we're getting a lot more media coverage of train crashes, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's out of the ordinary. How many are happening? I just don't know.
Well, I think that they have been actually rather common. And I think you're right that part of this is that there's more media attention to them, but that's not a bad thing. The question that we should be asking is why there wasn't more media attention to them before. Because remember, even in the context of the Norfolk Southern crash, the media was silent on it for a long time. And frankly, I think but for the iconic optics of that huge plume rising to the air,
cloud,
and the fact that we just had that Don DeLillo movie came out that had the same thing happen in the same place, that's what really pushed it into the national
Secretary
sphere.
Mayor Pete should visit. It's a site of a massive calamity under his ostensible purview. What happened to good old-fashioned politicians going down there, getting their hands dirty, fielding some questions from frustrated families? Maybe that would help set them at ease.
Well, if you heard what that reporter that just was speaking in that clip said, apparently Norfolk Southern people are concerned to go because they're afraid for their safety. And
that sounds a little ridiculous.
I appreciate that. I don't want to pantomime like the way Obama went to Flint and pretended to drink the water. Like, I certainly don't want people to say, hey, I was here and so therefore it's safe and everybody should relax when we know it's not true. And frankly,
Secretary Mayor Pete lives in Michigan. Right, that's where he got his. I believe that's where he bought a house with Jason, and they have kids.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Not in
Detroit area, but in Michigan.
Not in South Bend, Illinois.
No, I'm pretty sure they moved to Michigan.
Oh, interesting. I didn't
potentially,
realize that.
So that someone could make
a presidential run, Senate run
at some point.
Oh,
because one of Michigan's senators announced her retirement.
Interesting.
Stabenow.
Well, good luck with that, with such an enormous crisis happening right there in the border. And look, the point that was also made about, look, it is horrible for a parent not to know if they could bathe their children.
Correct. He changed his residency, too. He lives in Traverse City, Michigan.
Well, like the reporter saying, it's horrible not to be able to know if you're going to bathe your children. And what's even more horrible to think about the fact that so many Americans, for various reasons, have been in that exact situation for years. We're talking Obama going to Flint. That dates really how long this crisis has been going on. Talking about what's been going on in Mississippi. And I've been really heartened, frankly, to hear a lot of the conservative reports, including all of those other water events as part of the ongoing infrastructure problem in the United States of America. The question is, are you going to support the kind of infrastructure funding that the Build Back Better bill did include that was supposed to address some of these problems? Are we actually going to be critical of the role that lobbying dollars play in influencing politicians to green light all of the deregulations that enable this kind of crisis? Are we going to actually provide the funding that allows the EPA to not only do the kind of checks that will actually determine whether or not people can go back to their homes, but also to resettle people while they're figuring it out, even if they are from these low-income communities that so often are the ones affected because those are the ones that we drive hazardous rail trains through? This is, I think, a real reckoning moment for a lot of people to reorient their politics and say this isn't about red, blue, left, right. This is a top-down issue, and whether or not when real people are affected by a real crisis like this, we're willing to mobilize the enormous resources of our nation to help them, or just complain, fearmonger, and point fingers.
Well, we will continue to follow any updates in the train derailments, and we'll have more Rising right after this.